So to finish up on the help and tips part 1, and then we'll move on to part 2. Again, we can take anything within our data frame, any variable we want, and do a mathematical operation to it. So I can take two variables and multiply them together, for instance. So if I wanted to do that, I could say, all right, I'm going to add a new variable to my data set. I'm going to add it to the NBA 15. I'm going to add the little dollar sign there. And I'm going to call this just new variable. And I want that new variable to be the multiplication of two existing variables in my data set. And so again, name of the data set, NBA 15, the dollar sign to pull up the variables I already have. And I just want that to be, say, the total rebounds, and I want to multiply that times the total number of assists. I can do that. It recognizes it just like any other mathematical operation. So I can multiply those two things together and say, make a thing called new variable and add it to the NBA 15 data set. And I'm going to now go check that it's there with my str function. And sure enough, right there at the bottom, new variable. And it's an integer, and it's all these numbers. So anyway, you probably won't need to do this at all, but if you need to make a new variable out of existing variables, you can do that just with these types of options here. And again, all these little explanations are here. Okay, now let's move on to the second tips file. This is where we actually start to do some more interesting things. And where are we here? There we go. Open up my script. This just takes a second here. Great. Okay, so we're going to do a whole smorgasbord of things here. I'm not going to talk about every exact little thing because you can go through it, but I just want to highlight what's here. So in Help and Tips Part 1, we imported data two different ways. You can make your own data. You can type it in manually in RStudio and make the data frame within RStudio. And the way to do this, and again, I'll just sort of construct it for you here so you can see it being typed out in front of you. All you do is you type the name of your variable that you want to make. And let's say I want to make a variable called variable1. And you say equals, and we use this thing called the C function. And C stands for concatenate. Big word to just say, hey, there's a list of stuff that's about to come your way. And in this case, let's say variable 1 had the values of 5 and 8 and 2 and 3 and 6 and 1. We could say that variable 1 was, say, some kind of pre-test score for students in a class. And I'm just going to do Control-Enter. And great, it returns it. I've got a variable 1. I've got a variable 1 as you see over here. And if I just want to verify that I've got variable 1, I can type it in, hit Enter, and it gives me those values back. Great. Well, I'm going to make a variable 2. We could pretend that this is some kind of post-test score of some kind. I'm going to run that, Control-Enter. And now I'm going to make a basically a factor variable. And I'm going to call it grouping. And I'm going to have these strings of yeses and nos depending on whatever condition this may be. We could say that yes stands for receiving a special education intervention, or no stands for not receiving a special education intervention. And so I have my yeses and nos, Control-Enter, and now I've got this treats it as a character or a string variable. If I wanted to, again, make this into a factor, I could use a dot as factor, like we saw in Help and Tips Part 1. So in any event, I've got 3 variables here. And now how do I actually make a frame, a data frame out of them? Well, I have to use the data frame command. It's pretty straightforward. I start with the name of the data set that I want to call it. So I want to call it fake data. I can then say data frame, parentheses, and it says, hey, great, I know I'm going to see now a bunch of variables put in here. And here we go. I'm going to put in variable 1, variable 2, and grouping, the names of our 3 variables that we made up here. And I'm going to do Control Enter to run that. And if you look under the data thing, I've now got fake data, fake.data. 6 observations, 3 variables. If I want to look at it, I can use the view function, or I can just click on it, but let's use the view function. Control Enter. There we go. Variable 1, variable 2, grouping, etc. So all I did was type these things in by hand and then combine them. And you'll see, just another quick little aside, you can hover over here and get information about these variables. There are little arrows here that let you sort the columns, depending on what you want to do with them, to better look at your data. I don't have you do anything with that, but it's here to look at if you want to. Great. So that's my fake data. 2 numeric variables and some character variable. Now, just for the purpose of going forward, I'm going to use this dot as factor here to do something interesting. So I'm going to take my fake data and I'm going to say, give me the grouping variable and make it a factor. And now it should be a factor when I go look at it. Let me do this down here. Fake, str, fake dot data. Great, factor with 2 levels, no and yes. Okay. So now I've got data. I want to find stuff about it. I want to talk about it a little bit. Here with the basic R function is how you find the mean. It's the just mean parentheses in the name of your data set and the variable that you want to find the mean of. So I can do mean of my data set. I'll just do click and run. 4.16. I can do the median. 4. I can do the standard deviation. I can find the range, the interquartile range, the minimum, the maximum. You get it. So these are just our basic descriptive statistics. And again, if they're missing data, you can type in the functions you have up here, like mean, fake data, variable 1. But you can add an na.rm equals true. And what that'll do is that'll remove missing data from the calculations. Again, we won't deal with that, but this is a common thing that's done if you have missing data. If you want to get the 5-number summary, you just do summary, and then just like we've seen before, fake data, $, name of the variable. There we go, our 5-number summary. Okay, we did mean, median, standard deviation, all these things one thing at a time. There's a much faster way to do it, and here's where our first package comes in. So open up the psych package, make sure you have it installed. So I'm going to open up the psych package with library, psych, and it is open. All I need to do to get the descriptive statistics is just say, hey, describe, and then the name of my data set, and Control Enter. And there we go. It gave me everything. Variable 1, variable 2, and then the grouping variable, which is kind of weird because it's a factor, but ignore that. So in any event, it gives you the mean, median, standard deviation, everything. Let's say I just want to look at the descriptive statistics for one particular value. Then I just do what we did before. We pluck out an individual variable here, describe, and enter, and there we go. It's all there. Now let's say I want to look at descriptive statistics, but I want to look at them depending on which group we're in. Remember, in these fake data, I've got some rows are in the yes group, and I've got some rows in the no group, these right here. What if I just want to find the mean of variable 1 in the no group and the mean of variable 1 in the yes group? Let's say I want to compare those means. This is where we use describe by. So it's described by the data I'm using. And in this case, let's get the descriptive statistics for both variable 1 and variable 2. And so I won't specify any specific variable. So I type in the name of my data frame, and then all I have to do to tell it is that the group variable that I have is called grouping. So this is the name of the grouping variable that we're using here. And there we go. Again, this last line doesn't make much sense on each one, but you can see I've got the mean of variable 1 in the no group. I've got the mean of variable 2 in the no group. I've got the mean of variable 1 in the yes group. I've got the mean of variable 2 in the yes group, and all these other things. So that lets you split things across groups. Finally, for this video, and I'll just let you read through this, we're not really going to do many t-tests in this class. I have you do it in the first activity just so you get comfortable with doing things in R. But to do just a basic one variable t-test to compare whether or not its value of the population parameter is equal to 0, it's just t.test, the name of the data frame like we've seen before, $, and the name of the variable, and I hit enter, and it gives me all this output. And you should have seen, these things should look somewhat familiar for you from your first stats class. T-statistic, some degrees of freedom, and p-value on this. And remember, this is saying whether or not the average of variable 1 is significantly different from 0. So just our basic t-test here. And if you want to change the population value of comparison, so if I want to ask whether or not the mean of variable 1 is significantly different from 5, I just tack on a mu equals 5 at the end here. I still use t.test. And I get different t-statistic, same degrees of freedom, different p-value. So in this case, since p is so high, I do not have evidence that the mean of variable 1 is significantly different from 5. You can specify one-tailed tests here. Again, I'm just going to quick breeze through this. You can change the confidence level on your confidence interval. You get confidence intervals with this. So that's here. And you can do a paired t-test if our data are paired, and say variable 1 versus variable 2, and that those are paired. This is a type of study design if we had paired data. And then it does a paired t-test between them and compares the mean of variable 1 to the mean of variable 2 if for some reason that those were pairs of things, and gives us a t, a degrees of freedom, and a p-value. Finally, let's say we wanted to compare. Remember, in our fake data, we've got this grouping no and grouping yes. Let's say we wanted to compare whether or not there were significant differences in the average of variable 1 compared to the no group compared to the yes group. So I can just say t.test, the name of the variable that I care about, this variable 1, and then I do a little squiggle, and then I do the name of my grouping variable, fake.data $grouping. And I hit enter. And that's it. And it compares the no's and yeses, the means of those across group variable 1. And you can, this is if the data are arranged differently, you would do it in this way. But again, we're not going to do too many t-tests in this class, but that's how it is. So this is Help and Tips 2, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you.